I think I've always been interested in how things work or finding out about things. My father is a development engineer, and whilst he never pushed me into engineering, in fact, if anything, I would have said, sort of tried to discourage me from going into a profession that he didn't think was properly valued, he must have helped form the sort of wanting to find out and test things. I think, well, I've always been a systems person, so I'd sort of think a system of how things worked. Well, I can remember just something which came up with my son actually last week, when you should clean your teeth in the morning, because I can quite clearly work out thinking, well, it was silly to clean my teeth before breakfast because then I was eating food and I should clean it afterwards. And since then I've learned that the important thing is to clean off the plaque before that's accumulated overnight. Then I was doing this and I asked my son had he cleaned his teeth, and he said, well, I don't see the point of cleaning your teeth before breakfast because you're going to eat food. And I thought, it's the same thing. So that's not how things work, but it's trying to work out how life works, I guess.
Were you a girl that would sort of be taking things apart in the house and things like that, or were you quite like that kind of how things work?
I didn't do the Meccano modelling or the planes thing, but I do remember being the first girl to do woodwork at my primary school. Until I was there, they made the girls do needlework or clay or something, and the boys did woodwork, and I'd already done woodwork with my dad in the garage, so I wasn't very impressed by that, so I appealed or whatever and was the first girl ever to do woodwork, so I guess I was a tomboy from that point of view. Well, I was good at maths at school, I guess, and liked chemistry in particular. And I liked history as well, so I don't know. At one point I thought I'd go off and do English and history, but then realised that my memory was definitely not up to being a historian. And I liked maths, physics and chemistry, and those were what I did for A-level, for advanced level. And while you're going to all these forum for sixth formers to try and decide what to do at university, I was wondering whether to be a chemical engineer, but that was kind of the rate side of chemistry and not really what I liked. And I heard this metallurgist talking about metallurgy and thought, yeah, that's the bit of chemistry and physics I like. So that's what decided me on choosing material science as a course, although my careers mistress didn't know what material science was and assumed it was something to do with dressmaking or needlework. My current role, I say, is research and teaching, and the research is testing small bits of things to find out how they behave and relate that to the structure. I don't tend to mention the materials bit because it does tend to confuse people.
Why would the materials confuse people?
Because whether it's because I'm a woman, it's possible. If I say materials to, I think, the man and woman in the street, that doesn't mean what it means to me, which is anything that anything is made up from. It means fabric and rolls of fabric. The best part of my job is when you get some results in the lab and you're sitting down and you suddenly see a pattern and if you like, you've cracked the code. That's the best bit. The worst bit is setting and marking exams. I find that very stressful and not particularly enjoyable.
Why is that?
The stress is because you know you're affecting people's futures, so that you really want to make sure it's fair and that the allocation of every mark is fair. And it's just a very difficult thing to do. And then marking 200 versions of the same thing is not particularly innovating. Yes, to me it feels like being one of those magicians with spinning plates, and some weeks all I do is rush round and just give a little tweak to each plate, and I don't feel I've made any progress on any of the projects, because there's teaching and everything as well. I don't think I'm going to make breakthroughs at the frontier of science. I'm not sure I ever would, and certainly part-time I think because I'm half-time, you can't be right at the forefront and running a big group in the way that you might do if you were full-time. I'd like to think that the work on the biology route will eventually lead to something quite exciting in terms of being able to choose the best crops and help with the effects of global warming and getting enough food for everyone. I like doing it because I'm a talker and I like communicating. I think that's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards being an academic rather than just staying in a lab somewhere. I think there is a big gulf of misunderstanding about scientists in general. I think that there's some kind of suspicion that they're all maybe a bit evil or not helping things in a way it's a pity. So I guess I try and talk about my job if I'm asked, because I think it's important that people think of science as something to enjoy and something that's really important to how we live. I think a stereotypical scientist is someone in a white coat with safety glasses at a bench in something that looks like a chemistry laboratory at school. And I think because school is where a lot of people have their experience of science, that kind of persists. So I don't think I'm a stereotypical, or I don't fit that stereotype, because I spend most of my day in my office. So I do put on a white coat in the lab occasionally. But I think what people miss about scientists is the quest for knowledge. You're doing it because you want to find out and explain things, in the same way that philosophers and historians and business analysts are all trying to explain things. It's all about analysing data. Well, I have 2 children, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, a boy and a girl, who also like finding out about things, I'm glad to say. And so that takes up quite a lot of my time, obviously, as taxi driver and sitting by the side of the swimming pool and all those other things. I like playing the violin, and I guess that's, certainly used to be my main hobby. I'm not sure I have time for hobbies anymore. And I like being in the outside air. I used to sail a lot. I've got an Oxford Blue for sailing from my doctorate, but I haven't converted my husband to the sailing idea, so I don't tend to do that. I now cycle and walk. Belong to a gym, but don't go there nearly as often as I should. Well, my husband is also an academic. In fact, he's a fellow senior lecturer in this department, and we met at university just after I'd started my first job on a staff development course. We were both doing a course on learning to teach at university. I think working in the same job is probably quite helpful, because you both understand the stress of when you've got 200 exam papers that have to be in by the following day. When I was at Bristol before, we were in completely separate departments. I was in aerospace engineering then. And I think in a way it was easier being in separate departments than being in the same department, just because there's a slight tendency for people to think of me as an extension of him, I guess, because he's full-time and I'm half-time, which can be frustrating because we are our own separate people, and I don't necessarily know where he is all the time. People, if they can't find him, will come and knock on my door and say, do you know where he is? With some justification, because I may do, but on the other hand, I prefer to be seen as my own person. Well, when he first met me at Bristol, I was growing diamond. You can produce diamond by a chemical vapour deposition process. So the normal process of producing diamond is it's formed at great temperatures and pressures in the core of the earth. But in the 1980s, 1990s, it was discovered you can grow it from gaseous phases. So I was growing my own diamonds and thin film diamonds and testing them, but never made his fortune or mine from that. If I wasn't a scientist, I would probably be running a cafe, baking cakes and selling coffee, because I love cooking and I love food. So I guess if I wasn't a scientist, that's probably what I'd be.